Well, after heated negotiations in the capital, Ankara, Turkey and the US have agreed on a number of plans for Turkey's third planned operation into Syria. Now, first and foremost, what they've agreed on is to create a safe zone. Now, we know that Turkey wanted to create a safe zone about 30 to 40 kilometers into Syria. Now, there's no details of how wide or in what length that safe zone will be created at, but there will be a joint operation center now where Turkey and the US will work together to create that safe zone. And secondly, what's been agreed is that the US has agreed to address Turkey's immediate threats from the YPG-controlled areas along the border. Now, what this entails, of course, is some shelling that's spilling over onto Turkish territory, missiles that's falling over into Turkish territory, and of course, to make sure that the YPG terror group does not create an autonomous zone. So these will be addressed by the US. So they've agreed on these two. Now, thirdly, after the creation of that safe zone, what will happen is what Turkey and the US agreed to do is create a peace corridor. Now, what this will mean, we've seen in previous operations, including in Jarablus, in Al-Bab, in Afrin, where after there was peace sustained, refugees who wanted to return to Syria returned. Now, what they want to do here with this third planned operation, of course, is to make sure refugees can return back into Syria after this peace corridor is created. And we already know that there are about 400,000 just Kurdish refugees who've escaped the YPG terror group. So what this means is most of them or some of them will be returning back as well. So we know that they've agreed on these critical points so far.
Well, Omar, that's good to know basically what it entails, but we do have to look past that first of all, because Turkey has been trying to establish a safe zone since 2012 there, and US and Turkey have not always seen eye to eye on many issues, especially when it comes to foreign policy and when it comes to YPG there on the ground. So how did we get here?
Well, of course, we saw Turkey and the US sit on the table for a planned operation into Manbij as well. And we've seen them disagree on a number of issues. Now, Turkey continuously called on the US to drop its support for the YPG terror group, which the US did not do. Now, in terms of how we got from that point to this point, now we know that Turkey is very adamant and was very keen. We're along the border. There are troops stationed all along the border. There are tanks, there are military vehicles, there are howitzers. So Turkey was prepared to enter Syria unilaterally. So we know that they're very adamant about doing this. But it seems like this time in Ankara, they've convinced the US that now this corridor must be sustained and the YPG terror group should no longer be a threat for Turkey. So it seems like Turkey was promised to make sure that the YPG terror group is not a threat for them anymore. So this time round, I think things may be different, and it seems like the US and Turkey finally have found mutual ground on this issue.
Well, Omar, looking at the situation in Idlib in the past month, so what will it mean in terms of civilians, Syrian civilians there, this peace corridor, when it's established?
Well, absolutely. Of course, the bombardment by the Syrian regime is going on in Idlib as well. And every day there are new deaths accounted for. And of course, there are many civilian deaths coming and reports of civilian deaths coming out of there as well. And a lot of international groups are calling for aid to be sent into Idlib. Now, what this peace corridor would mean, of course, this is a very long border Turkey shares with Syria. It'll open up the way for aid to enter Syria as well, not just make sure refugees who are currently in Turkey who want to return will be stationed back in their country, but it also means that this corridor, of course, we're talking about areas that link highways, major highways in Syria that could be opened up now for that aid to travel to places like Idlib in Syria. So it's not just critical for Turkey it's not just critical for Turkey's national security, of course. This peace corridor will also mean that aid can be sent to where it is needed most in Syria, including places like Idlib.